The first time my own son handed me an invoice, I thought it was a joke. I stood there in the marble-floored foyer of the house I had paid for, oak-paneled walls gleaming, a chandelier dripping with crystal light, and stared at the piece of paper in his hand. It had my name on it, Ned Carter. Underneath, neatly typed, were words that didn't belong together. Lodging fee, 3 nights. That was the moment I realized something had gone terribly wrong in the life I thought I had built. My name is Grandpa Ned, though I wasn't always a grandpa, and once upon a time I was just Ned, the man who worked 2 jobs, wore the same boots until the soles fell off, and believed that if you loved your family enough, the world would eventually soften in return. I was wrong about that last part. One, where I came from. I grew up in a town so small it barely earned a dot on the map. We had 1 grocery store, 1 church, and 1 high school that doubled as a storm shelter. My father worked himself into an early grave at the mill, and my mother cleaned houses until her hands curled like dried roots. From them I learned 2 things: work hard and take care of your own. I married my wife, Elena, when we were both barely more than kids. She had a laugh that filled rooms and a way of touching your arm when she spoke that made you feel like the most important person alive. We didn't have much, but we had plans, and when our son Richard was born, those plans narrowed down to 1 simple goal: give him a better life than we had. I didn't mind missing birthdays or working overtime. I didn't mind the nights my back ached so badly I slept sitting up. Every sacrifice felt like an investment, compounding quietly over time. Richard grew up smart, too smart maybe. He learned early how to speak the language of ambition, private schools, internships, the right connections. Elena and I cheered him on, even when his world began to look less like ours. By the time Elena passed, cancer taking her quicker than either of us were ready for, Richard was already on his way up. I told myself she'd be proud. I told myself a lot of things. 2, the house. When Richard called me about the house, his voice buzzed with excitement. "Dad, you wouldn't believe this place," he said. 5 bedrooms, office, pool, the works. It's perfect for the kids. I knew what he didn't say. Perfect, but expensive. He was doing well, but not that well. His wife, Clara, had tastes that climbed faster than their income. Private schools, designer furniture, vacations that required passports and hashtags. "I can help," I said before he even asked. I had money saved, decades of careful living, modest habits, and a life that never learned how to spend freely. Elena and I had planned to travel one day. Now that money just sat there, heavy with purpose. "You don't have to, Dad," Richard said, though he didn't sound very convincing. "I want to," I replied. "This is what it's for." So I bought the house. I didn't put my name on the deed, didn't ask for anything in return. I told myself it wasn't about ownership, it was about legacy. When I signed the papers, my hand trembled a little, not from doubt, from pride. 3, the invitation. A year passed before I visited. I didn't want to intrude, that's what I told myself. The truth was, I felt out of place in Richard's new world. Phone calls were shorter now, visits less frequent. When he did call, he talked about business deals and property values, things I nodded along to but didn't really understand. Then one afternoon, he called. "Dad, you should come see the house," he said. "The kids would love it." My grandchildren, Evan and Lucy, were growing up fast. I could hear it in their voices. I didn't want to be a stranger to them. So I packed a small suitcase and drove the long road into a neighborhood where lawns were trimmed by hired hands and silence felt expensive. Richard greeted me at the door with a quick hug. Clara smiled politely, already distracted by her phone. The kids ran up, wrapped around my legs, and for a moment, everything felt right. That feeling didn't last. 4, the invoice. It was after dinner, on the first night. We sat in the living room, leather cushions, a television bigger than my first apartment. Richard cleared his throat, a sound I remembered from his childhood whenever he was about to ask for something. Dad, he said, handing me the paper, just so we're clear. I took it, confused. What's this? I asked. Clara looked up then, her lips pressed into a thin smile. Just a standard thing we do, she said. We treat everyone equally. Equally, I repeated, scanning the page. Richard shifted in his seat. You know, utilities, wear and tear, food, it adds up. I laughed, certain now that this had to be a joke. You're charging me to stay here? I asked. The room went quiet. Well, Richard said slowly, it is our home. Something inside me cracked, not loudly, not all at once, but enough to let the cold in. I bought this house, I said, not raising my voice, for you. Yes, Clara replied, and we're grateful, but that doesn't mean. That doesn't mean I'm family, I finished. Richard looked away. That night I lay awake in the guest room, the room I was paying for, and stared at the ceiling, wondering when love had become a transaction. 5. Remembering Elena. I dreamed of Elena. She was standing in our old kitchen, hands dusted with flour, smiling that patient smile of hers. Did we do something wrong, Ned? She asked gently. I woke with tears in my eyes. In the morning, I paid the invoice. Richard looked relieved. Clara looked satisfied. The kids didn't notice anything at all. But something had shifted in me, a quiet decision forming like frost. 6. Watching closely. I stayed for the rest of the visit, polite and distant. I watched how Richard spoke to his children, always in a hurry, how Clara corrected them sharply when they touched the wrong thing. At night, I sat alone and thought about what I had given and what I had received in return. This wasn't about money. It was about respect. When I left, Richard hugged me stiffly. Thanks for understanding, Dad, he said. I smiled. Oh, I understand perfectly, I replied. 7. What I did next. Back home, I called my lawyer. I hadn't put my name on the deed, but I had been careful. The purchase agreement included a clause, a small one, almost forgotten, that allowed me certain rights as the benefactor. At the time, it felt unnecessary. Now it felt like Elena's hand on my shoulder. I didn't act out of anger, I acted out of clarity. I adjusted my will. I stopped paying for extras, private schools, vacations, renovations. When Richard called, confused and irritated, I told him calmly. I'm treating you equally, I said, just like you taught me. 8. The reckoning. 6 months later, Richard showed up at my door. He looked tired, older. Dad, he said, not meeting my eyes, we need to talk. We sat at my small kitchen table, the same one Elena and I had shared for decades. I didn't realize, he began, how it made you feel. I waited. Clara hadn't come. I think we lost sight of what matters, he said quietly. I studied my son, the boy I once held in my arms, the man he had become. I didn't raise you to charge your father rent, I said, but I did raise you to learn from your mistakes. Tears welled in his eyes. I'm sorry, he whispered. 9. What family means. Forgiveness isn't forgetting, it's choosing what comes next. I forgave Richard, slowly, carefully. But things changed. The house was still his, the money was still spent, but the lesson lingered, heavy and necessary. Now my grandchildren visit me, just me, no invoices, no transactions. We bake cookies in the kitchen Elena once filled with laughter. And when they hug me goodbye, they call me Grandpa Ned, like it's the most valuable title in the world. Because in the end, I learned something too. You can buy a house, but respect, that has to be earned.